has changed. America has changed. If something were to happen tomorrow, how self-sufficient would you be? Could you grow your own food? Could you sustain your own livestock? Could you survive? This is the We Grow Our Show with Nick and Don. Nick and Don talk about everything from politics to planting. They cover techniques, methods, and tips on how to not only survive, but thrive. Visit the website at WeGrowOurs.com. Lock and load. This is the We Grow Our Show. Get your grow on.
Welcome back to the We Grow Our Show. After 2 weeks of being missing in action, we're back to fulfill all of your We Grow Ours needs. Entertainment, education, and general shenanigans.
There you go.
Did you miss us, folks?
Yeah, we had some sicknesses.
Yep. Don, you
Stomach flu throughout the
Stomach
house.
flu.
6 people, 2 bathrooms was not pleasant.
oh no.
How about you?
Well, it's this weird lung infection thing that tore through all my family.
Yikes. My sister had the bronchitis.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what same thing.
I don't know. It's just weird awesomeness coughing up my lungs.
Well, 2015 got off to a good start.
Yeah, and then it kind of flopped on its face 2 weeks later.
It happens, but we've got some good shows coming up. And this week we've got Rick Austin.
That's right. Rick Austin, The Secret Garden of Preparedness. Is that how it goes?
I don't know, but I've seen some of it. In fact, they were on a Doomsday Prepper, him and his wife.
They did. They were on not the week following mine, but the week after that.
Yeah, the last one of the season, I believe.
Oh. All I know is their business got a shout out. Not that I'm bitter or anything.
Who did? Oh, their business. Yeah, I know.
Well, they have a bunch of books and stuff. And
Well, they were a lot smarter with the contract.
yes,
too.
they were. They were. Well, we talked to Survivor Jane about
Yes,
it, and
yes.
and she told us that she was very stringent with her contract.
As she should have been.
Yeah,
As you
well,
should.
I was just, national TV, yeah, put me in front of the camera. It's my time to shine.
Yeah.
How did that
once.
work out for me?
Not once did that business name get up there. So
No. Thanks a lot, Doomsday Preppers.
yeah. Oh well.
Oh well, yeah.
I want to do a show that's better than Doomsday Prepper.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a GoPro camera. We've got some recording equipment.
Just need a drone.
A drone.
I want a drone. We got to be able to do aerial views of things.
Well, I'll put you in a slingshot and shoot you up there with the GoPro.
That'd be awesome.
At least the camera will survive.
That'd be awesome. Like paragliding. Ooh.
Anyway, on that note, what do we have coming up, Don?
Got March 7th, I believe. Is that the right date?
Believe so. Yeah, the Grow Your Own Food Summit.
The Grow Your Own Food Summit.
Phoenix
yeah.
Grow Your Own Food Summit.
Yep. And we're going to put a link on our webpage at WeGrowOurs.com.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the show notes and I'll put a blog post up. We'll put some more information up there. I'll try and get something on the right-hand side for everybody so we can, get some good info on that out there. It's going to be a great local one-day event. I'm actually not going to make it because I'm going to be in Florida.
You're going to be in Florida?
I'm going to be in Florida, in sunny Florida. Yeah, we're going to see my
Florida?
dad. Yep.
That's
To see my
cool.
dad, my aunt, my cousins, and the family. And
You'll have to take a lot of pictures because that homestead that they've got going out there sounds freaking awesome.
it is freaking awesome. 40 acres and aquaponics going now and the whole 9 yards gardening. And I'm
Big
looking
natural
forward to
gas generator.
it. Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, the house it's actually the area they're in is northern Florida. So it's a low wind area and zone 2 or something. So they still have like their house is like all concrete. It's like 9-inch thick concrete.
Oh.
It's designed because it's up on a hill. It's designed to withstand any hurricane that does happen to come through. So they've got that's my aunt's place out there. She's got it all set up. They're going to be opening a bed and breakfast as well. Yeah, I think we're going to be the first guests.
Awesome.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Well, my sister-in-law is getting married that day, but I think I'm still going to go to it.
You're going to go from the wedding to the summit,
Heck yeah.
or from the summit to the wedding, one of the two.
both, I think. I don't know exactly, but I'm looking forward to it. I mean, Kari and Greg are putting this one together. Well, they've been longtime friends of the show, and we see them at all the prepper expos. And
Yeah.
And, Yeah, I think we're going to have him on here.
Yeah,
Not next week, but the week after. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll get a little bit more info about that and what this whole day will entail.
Yeah, we'll get some links up and get some good stuff going. So, yeah, well, let's get Rick on.
Sounds good.
What will you do when your stored supplies run out? Are you prepared? Hostile Hair provides equipment and education you need to control your own infinite food supply. We have live food storage systems, rabbits, quail, and other urban livestock for any situation and strategy. Don't be limited by what's on the shelves. Get started with an infinite food source today. Get prepped, stay fed with Hostile Hair. Call 480-331-3761 or visit hostlehair.com.
Welcome back to the We Grow Ours show. We have a very special guest on the line, Rick Austin of Secret Garden of Survival.com. Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Well, we woke up breathing. Some days that's about all you can fall back on.
That's always good. Yeah.
Now, if I remember right, you guys are located somewhere in the Appalachians. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
In an undisclosed location. Now we're hearing all these things on the news lately about what is it, the Bomba Genesis, or what's the name of this weird snowstorm that they've got moving through up there? Is that hitting you?
No, actually, it just kind of skimmed us, but I think it hit Washington. And then New York was supposed to destroy, but they just didn't get the snow that they thought they were going to get. I know that Boston and New England, where I am from originally, is getting belted, and some of those places are getting 2 inches an hour. There's an awful lot of snow to have to move.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's 75 degrees in sunny southern Arizona.
So, Rick, I've got to ask you, being up there, if you do get that kind of snow, are you prepared for it? Does it bother you, or is it something that worries you? Is being stuck in the house or anything for a certain amount of time?
No, because, pretty much our garden's dormant. I'm still, out doing my livestock, and we've got, really some sustainable prepper-oriented livestock like goats that we milk, and, we get all of our milk, dairy products, cheese and yogurt and ice cream from that. And we've got ducks that are fine out in the snow, and they help me with my garden in the summertime, because they go out and pick up the bugs and slugs and snails that I don't want to have in the rest of my garden. So, and they fertilize as they go too. So, and we've got a rabbit tree in our barn too. So that keeps us busy, but I got a greenhouse concept called the Secret Greenhouse of Survival, which is really kind of the ultimate prepper greenhouse. And I've got plants growing year-round in that, so including citrus trees, which don't normally grow in the snow. So, we just picked some lemons yesterday, and I got some oranges growing right now, and I got coffee trees in there. So it's kind of a neat setup, and the way the greenhouse is set up, it's super insulated. It doesn't really look like a greenhouse. So it ultimately never, ever gets below 45 degrees in there. So it never gets below freezing. And, it allows us to grow food that we otherwise not be able to grow.
Is that kind of a subterranean setup, or how are you keeping it warm during the winter?
It's south-facing. It looks like an add-on porch, so it's kind of camouflaged in a way. From a prepper perspective, it's got super insulated windows, argon-filled windows, so it's not your typical, piece of crap, just stuff you bought from, the local refuse center. And it's set up in such a way that I've got a huge thermal mass in there of concrete planters that go all the way around the greenhouse. And they're about 3 feet high, so it's really easy to work with the plants because you don't have to bend over and don't have to get on your knees and that kind of stuff. And, we're growing stuff in there that vines and goes up to the roof, and we grow stuff that's, 6-7 feet tall, like citrus trees in there. And it's also kind of neat, too, because we can put a shade cloth on the thing in the summertime, and it allows us to grow food it would be too hot to grow in the summer out in the full sun. So, we can grow things like cabbage and lettuce and a lot of things that you'd normally only be able to grow in the spring in our environment. We can grow that in the dead of summer and, still have nice salads and everything else.
Oh, that sounds exciting. You're going to have to send us some pictures when you throw in the show notes. But
sure. Glad to.
Now, you said that you've got ducks. What breed of ducks are you running out there?
I've got both Pekings, which are your typical meat duck. They're big. They're almost the size of a goose. And I've also got khaki Campbells. And that's khaki as in the pants and Campbell's like in Campbell soup. And they're a medium-sized to large duck. The beauty of those things is they are the most prolific egg-laying fowl in the world.
Really?
They produce 320 eggs per duck per year.
Wow.
So, we get a lot of eggs. They produce an awful lot, which is kind of the way I look at my entire garden, all my buildings, all my livestock. It's really important to me that I can maximize my output with a minimal amount of input, because when I really looked at doing this sustainable homesteading thing full time, I looked long and hard at ways to not have to buy feed, not have to worry about should there never be another grocery store or seed store or feed store open, and should there be no electricity in the future. We're really kind of set up to have everything sustainable, including our livestock and our animals.
That's pretty slick. Now, one of the reasons I asked about the ducks is I actually had Muscovies in my backyard, and anytime anything would try to grow, those things would just graze it down. And you have none of your ducks are grazing at all, are they? Like you don't have them picking at your vegetables.
Garden, they'll eat my strawberries if I let them. I try to cordon it off where the strawberries are. But other than that, they really don't bother anything. They're just kind of going through, and like I said, they're picking the bugs and slugs and snails off the ground, and they're eating that. And they'll eat some grass-type stuff that we've got growing, but they really don't disturb the plants. And that's the reason I do not allow chickens in the garden, because chickens tend to scratch up roots and really kind of make a mess, and you end up losing your compost material and that sort of stuff, because they're all digging it up. But we get things out back.
So Rick, you mentioned that you're growing all of your own food and that whole sustainable kind of circle, so you don't need to go to the grocery stores, the feed shop and all that. Tell me about the type of acreage that you have, or how you're doing that without losing anything. What kind of setup do you have?
Well, I guess we can kind of get into the secret garden of survival, which is really, a lot of people would call it a permaculture concept, but it's really way, way more than that. I like to call it nature culture, because it's the way nature's been growing things for millions of years. And essentially, we've got it set up where we were on 53 acres, in an old oak forest on top of a mountain.
Wow.
We only use less than half an acre for all of our food. So it really is kind of an intense area, and it's set up in such a way that they're like these, they call them guilds, as in little groups. And it's the way nature's grown things for millions of years. If you start with a central fruit tree or nut tree, for example, that grows up and out, and eventually it has a canopy and there's shade underneath it. So there's certain types of plants that have a symbiotic relationship with that tree that grow underneath the tree in the shade. And then outside of that, you've got full sun. So now you have this circle of shrubs. And those shrubs can be things like blueberries, blackberries, elderberries. I literally grow every berry that will grow in my region. And then outside of that, you've got your herb layer, which is constantly flowering. So that attracts the predatory wasps and the pollinators. And that actually encircles your fruit. So it's almost like a defensive perimeter around that. And then outside of the herb layer, you've got your ground covers, which can be anything from strawberries to buckwheat to clover, which is also a nitrogen fixer, and the buckwheat is a nitrogen fixer. So that actually puts nitrogen back into the soil, and that's nature's way of fertilizing, and it's been like that for millions of years. So the neat thing about it is this is the way nature grows things. You don't plant in rows. Nature's never planted in rows. Man plants in rows because it's easy for machines to pick the stuff. Mm-hmm. So you know, this is how nature grows things. You're growing in 3 dimensions. You can grow 5 times more food per square foot than a traditional garden. Instead of having grapes, for example, on trellises, there are no trellises in nature, and grapes naturally grow on trees. So I've got grapes growing on my apple trees, and believe it or not, they actually do better together than they do by themselves. So
the grapes aren't hurting the apple tree at all. I'd think that it would kind of choke it out, but
no. Well, that's the way nature has grown grapes for millions of years, and you know, there's a symbiotic relationship between the two. The grapes actually like mottled sun more than they like intense full sun. And you know, when we first did this thing, I wasn't stupid. So, you know, I wanted to experiment, and I've got grapes growing on an apple tree, and I've got grapes growing on trellises about 15 feet away, directly in front of these grapes of the apple trees. And the grapes in the apple trees produce 7 times more fruit than the grapes on trellis.
Wow.
And they're right in the same place. So, and we don't use fertilizer, we don't use pesticide, we don't use weed killer. So like I said, it's nature culture. It's the way things have grown for millions of years. And for a prepper, it's also neat because it looks wild and overgrown. It looks like somebody abandoned the property. You don't know that there's food growing there. So anybody passing by your property wouldn't even know that you have stuff growing there. They would assume that the house was abandoned, and they just walk by. As opposed to, you know, your typical row garden, somebody walks by that, or if you have a zombie herd, so to speak, who are going from one place to another like locusts and consuming all the food and marauding the people that live in their homes that have worked hard to create their own gardens. As soon as they see a row garden, they're going to assume that there's either food there out in the field, and they're going to strip it clean, or that you've got food stored in your home, and they're going to attack you. So it's a great way to grow food where people don't know that there's anything growing there. And there's just an amazing number of symbiotic relationships that things work together, and you can grow so much more food in the same amount of space. I get pictures on my website and in my book that show this 2 foot by 2 foot square in my garden, and I've got clover, oats, cucumbers, peanuts, comfrey, and a number of other things, some mint and some mountain mint, all growing in the same area. And you know, the traditional thinking is that, everything's going to choke each other out, but that's not the way it works. They all find their own space. They all share nutrients. You know, there's just these symbiotic relationships that they have where they all work better together than planting in straight rows, which to me, I've never liked doing. So
now, you mentioned earlier that feeding the livestock from what you're growing is part of your plan. And, you know, I'm a rabbit man. We've actually spoken before about raising rabbits. And,
right. Yep.
What are you growing for your bunnies? I heard a couple of things in there that would work for them, but what are you raising for your goats and you know, other than the bugs that the ducks eat, but what are all the plants that you're feeding your animals?
We've got all kinds of vegetables and fruit. We're growing oats, or we're growing wheat. You know, I actually tell the audience that I was asking you where I can find some barley, because I know when you were on my radio show, you were telling me that you were doing sprouts of barley, and I just can't seem to find anybody around here that can sell me seeds so I can get the thing started. But
find a local brewery and ask them where they're getting their barley. That's the best spot to start. And then you can head it out. I think it takes about 3 months. I don't know how much barley you'd be able to grow in your area, but it takes about 3 months from seed to getting a good head on it. Mm-hmm. So you could thresh your own barley if you could get a source of it. As far as I know, there isn't a genetically modified barley yet, but there is, you know, they do use Roundup and stuff on it.
Right.
So I would plant the non-organic and then harvest the organic and then go from there.
Yeah, good idea. So anyway, in answer to your question, we're growing all kinds of stuff, and the goats, you know, they are browsers. They naturally would rather eat leaves than eat hay. You know, they're not really, they're not like cows. They don't like to eat grass. So, you know, they'll go through and they'll trim back my blackberry bushes. You know, they'll eat the thorniest things. You just couldn't believe it. But they go through and they'll eat basically out of my garden. They'll eat in their own areas because we've got 53 acres of woods here. There's plenty for them to eat, and they'll just go through and they know what they need to eat. So they pick up, you know, one day they'll eat a lot of one type of thing and a little bit of something else, and the next day they won't eat that much of the thing they ate the day before, and they just know what they need for nutrients. And, you know, when you let them do what they want to do, you know, they're much better off and everybody's healthier. And, you know, it doesn't cost me any money.
That's the part that I like the best is, yeah, I like going natural, but I'm a cheap SOB. I like it when it doesn't cost me anything.
What type of goats do you raise?
I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. I mean, when we looked at this whole homesteading thing, and I've been a survivalist and prepper for years and years and years, as long as I can remember. But when we decided to do this thing and retire to the mountains of Appalachia, you know, I really looked at how did the old timers do what they did? How did they live without electricity? How did they live without you know, running water? I mean, how was it that they were able to survive for thousands and thousands of years without all these modern conveniences? And I started there and tried to figure out how I could be the most efficient. And just like you guys, I am a cheap SOB, and I used to be a business guy, so return on investment's a really big thing for me. You know, having minimal amount of input and maximum amount of output. And when I looked at goats, I looked and sort of came to the conclusion that the best breed was really Nigerian dwarfs. They're a smaller goat. They're not a meat goat. They are a milk dairy goat, and they provide better milk, higher fat content, like 50% higher butter fat than all the other goats out there. Produce a tremendous amount for very little size and very little input. So they don't take up a lot of space in my barn. I didn't have to build a big area for them. You know, they don't eat a lot, but they produce an awful lot. And they are very good-natured, very good-tempered, and they can live in all kinds of environments.
Yeah, they're fun little goats. We've got a couple of them. They're actually, they can be pretty decent meat goats too, but they're definitely better dairy. We just had our buck as a Nigerian dwarf, just bred with a mini Alpine. So we're having some more mini Alpines. So they're our dairy goats. So it's a lot of fun.
You say they're good tempered, but I still have a big old bruise on my thigh from a not so nice goat that I got to meet with this weekend.
It was a boy, I imagine.
So not only did my leg hurt, but I also smelled like pee for a good 6 hours.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Well, our males are separated by about half an acre from our females, and the only time they get together is when the females are screaming for attention. So, they only go into the heat for a short period of time, and I joke about the fact that I've got to take care of and basically house these 3 male goats, and they've got basically a 5-minute chore once a year. but that provides us with babies, and without babies you don't have pregnant mothers. Without pregnant mothers you don't have milk. Without milk then you don't have all these other things. So
absolutely.
So the neat thing about the babies is they're very much in high demand. So right now we're pretty much maxed out on what we can use on our farm, so we will sell the babies to other people. And, in a grid down situation in the future, we could probably use those as barter too. But they allow me to pay for any feed and anything else that I might, buy at the store. So it's very self-sustaining in that way too.
So tell us how you're using some of the waste that's produced from everything that you're doing and how you put that back into the system.
Well, I joke with people that I used to be a plumber's son. And, when I was when I was in high school and college, I would work for my father during the summers. And one day I was standing knee deep in human excrement, digging a ditch for a sewer system. And I said, I want to do something different in my life. So I ended up doing things, went to college, ended up, getting into advertising and media business, and became a television producer, and had an office at Universal Studios in the latter part of my life, and was doing pretty well for myself. And then we decided to go into this whole homesteading thing, and we eventually got animals and got into farming, and now I spend the majority of my time shoveling poop. It's the rabbits are easy. Because I've got a little system set up where the trays there's no trays underneath, but basically I've got this kind of a plastic corrugated roofing material that goes underneath, and that all goes into a bucket. So I can take that stuff and I can dump that in the garden, and I'm doing that constantly all year round. The ducks are pretty dirty in their enclosed area at nighttime, so I put a lot of straw down there, and eventually that poopy straw gets taken out in a wheelbarrow, and I spread that around the garden as mulch and as nice fertilizer. And I do the same thing with the goat stalls. So we're using that all the time, use it for everything, and we're keeping the plants fertilized too with this natural high nitrogen rich fertilizer, as well as the straw, which really kind of mulches around the plants too.
Nice.
Are you doing any composting?
Minimal amount, because a lot of our scraps end up going to the animals anyway. So it's that's not really, and we don't have a lot of scraps to start with. I mean, we're pretty efficient about what we cook and how we cook, and so we're really not doing all that much composting. I do recommend that people that are just starting out with a garden, that they get this decomposed mulch, which is kind of an acrid mulch. It's the kind of mulch that you can stand next to. It's made up of usually hardwood material that's been decomposing for a while. You can stand next to it. You can feel the heat coming off of it. You actually see steam coming off of it. And that's kind of how I started with my garden, because we were in red clay here on top of rock, and there wasn't a lot of living material in the soil. So we had to bring in some decomposed mulch, but that brought in microorganisms, and that brought in all kinds of great stuff to help us get things started. And when we did our initial plantings, I started with buckwheat, which is, again, a nitrogen fixer, and it's flowering all the time, and you can eat it. You can make buckwheat pancakes out of it, flour, and that kind of stuff. And it's a great attractor for the pollinators and the predatory wasps that you want to have around. I also happen to have beehives, by the way, so we produce a lot of honey here, as well as pollinate all our crops with our honeybees. And since they don't have to go anywhere except my garden, they're less likely to pick up poisons and GMO and Roundup type stuff, because they don't really have to go anywhere other than my garden, which is constantly flowering, because I've got stuff coming into season all different times of the year. So, the strawberries will flower first, and they will produce first, and then the blueberries and the blackberries, and then, the pears, the peaches. So all of these things don't come all at once. I don't harvest everything at once. If I had to, there would be no way I could keep up with it. But everything is coming into a season at a different time, and likewise, everything's flowering at a different time. So the bees always have food in my garden, and I produce about 60 pounds of honey per hive per year.
Really?
Which is a lot of honey.
Wow. Well, in closing, why don't we talk a little bit about?
We're done already?
No,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, pretty soon. Pretty soon. I'm not going to cut you short right there, because now I'm thinking honey. I need to talk a little bit about bees' balanced diet and all that. But we've talked to a few other people that keep bees, and they say that one of the main reasons for colony collapse is that the bees get tired of eating what they're being trucked to eat. Like, they go out to these huge monocrop fields, and then it's not really the colonies collapsing. It's the beehives just like, well, we're just going to take off. Next time they open up, they find somewhere else.
If you look at the almond industry, and I don't know if you're talking about that in particular, but
that's one of
these
them.
These guys that have warehouses full of bees in Iowa. It's winter time, and they put these things in the back of a truck and they trucked them to California and they let them out, and it's like, wait a minute, it's not time yet for us to come out of here. I mean, that creates a tremendous amount of stress on the bees to start with, and it is a monocrop. I mean, they're eating all the same stuff, and then now they're mixing with bees from other hives from other parts of the world. I mean, and the country and other parts of the world, and they're picking up things and diseases and that kind of stuff that they wouldn't get where they naturally are. Mm-hmm. So that whole industry of trucking bees around, I think, is just stupid. There are guys that are making money doing it, but they're also losing a lot of bees, and I think it's hurting our colonies of bees. But for me, everything that I've studied in terms of where colony collapse disorder is coming from, it's you understand our friend Monsanto, who is trying to save us, I guess. At least they say they are to the public.
Feeding the world.
Yeah, genetically modified crops. They're Roundup-ready crops. Bayer, the aspirin company in Germany, back in 2004, developed this neonicotinoid pesticide because they were trying to stop this rootworm that was attacking the corn crop in Germany. And they knew that this stuff was deadly poison for bees. And but they said, "Oh, don't worry about it because it's just going to be in the ground and it's just going to kill these worms." So, and bees don't really pollinate corn anyway. It's a grass, so it basically blows. Their pollen just blows around by the air and lands on other ears of corn, and basically that's how corn pollinates. But what they didn't know, or they say they didn't know, was that the poison is systemic. It went from the roots up the stalk into the fruit or the corn itself, and into the pollen. And so literally we're eating that poison all the time, every time we eat corn. And corn is, in terms of the processed food industry, corn's the number one ingredient in just about everything. That high fructose corn syrup. So, that is killing bees. And it's also this corn pollen is a low-grade pollen. Now, like I said, bees don't pollinate corn, but they will pick it up. And because it's a low-grade pollen, low-quality pollen, they'll store it in their hives over the winter. And when they're out of everything else, that's when they eat that stuff. And what this poison pollen does is it gives them essentially Alzheimer's disease. So the bees leave the hive and go out when it warms up, and they can't find their way back, which is why you find these hives that are full of honey in the winter, really active, really healthy hive during the summer. And when spring comes, they're all gone. And, there's plenty of food in there. There's plenty of honey in there, but they've all disappeared. So
part of that whole problem, though, Rick, is that these mass growers of bees are not letting them. They're not getting any honey. They're taking that honey away and they're feeding them back corn syrup. The entire thing that's killing them and wasn't supposed to affect them in the first place is the only thing they're offering.
That's stupid. They're as stupid as the monocrop commercial farmers are in terms of how they're growing their food. They're doing it to make money, and they're not doing it to eat. And I'm in a position where I can choose what I want to do, and I don't grow stuff commercially. And the beauty of what I'm doing and other people like me is, we are living an organic lifestyle, and I'm not doing it because I'm some tree hugger that loves to be organic for the sake of being organic. I just don't want to poison myself and my animals either. So we're eating healthier, better, more food, and certainly without the expense. And you look at grocery stores today, and it's just absolutely amazing how the packages are getting so much smaller and the prices are going higher. So
So I have a question on that note. I mean, you guys, you have more of what I would call a prepper mindset. Right. Are you taking this out with your books and the websites and the podcast? How are you taking this out and teaching the community around you? Are you offering this up to people as far as coming to your property and teaching in classes, or are you doing it and reaching out via the books and the website and that type of thing?
The books, the website, and I do a lot of traveling around the country and go to prepper conferences and that kind of stuff. And this year we did a conference called Prepper Camp, and it was a nationwide conference, and we did it here in the Appalachian Mountains. We had people coming from as far away as California, Canada, Florida, Texas, all over the country. And it was a 3-day event with 30 of the best speakers in the world on preparedness topics in their particular fields. And, of course, I talked about my secret garden of survival. I talked about my greenhouse. Survivor Jane talked about, hygiene and survival basics. And we had people that were teaching people how to make cheese and how to can and how to pickle stuff. And, the beekeeper showed how you can have bees and, keep them naturally. And we had guys that were teaching, military tactics as well in terms of self-defense and defending your property. So
how do we get our industry, because I consider myself kind of a prepper as well as a homesteader, but how do we get the industry out of the mindset of everything I do is completely secret to move in that direction of what I'm doing could help others around me, and if they're not hungry, they're not going to come knocking at my door? How can we help? How do you envision that whole movement moving outward from not just being preppers, but to being homesteaders and stewards of the community?
I think the longer you're in this, the more you see that. I think there's a lot of people out there that think prepping is just going out and buying stuff and putting it on a shelf. And I believe that you don't know what you don't know. Don't buy a package of seeds and expect you're going to know how to grow something when the grid goes down and we're suddenly in chaos. Just putting a bunch of canned food up on a shelf is not prepping, in my opinion. Buying a bunch of ammunition is not prepping. You've got to really kind of live the lifestyle. You've got to be able to understand what it really takes. And there's a huge learning curve for us when we first started this whole thing, because we just didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know what it took to do this and that and the other thing. So, living the lifestyle is important, and we talk about that all the time when we're out in public, and that people need to practice. They need to use their preps. They need to know how to do homesteading skills, and more of the conferences we're going to are kind of back to the basics, homesteading, things incorporated in it as well. So
it's good to see our industry moving in that direction. And Rick, as we do have to wrap it up, we're almost out of time here. Go ahead and list off your contact information, your website, how our listeners can get a hold of you, and we'll get all of that put into the show notes as well.
Sure, no problem. You can get my books, Secret Garden of Survival and Secret Greenhouse of Survival, on Amazon.com. You can find out more information about it at my website, which is secretgardenofsurvival.com. So you can get discounts on my books. You can find out more information, but you can get everything at Amazon. The books are in Kindle format as well, and they're on BarnesandNoble.com in the Nook format. So you can find all of that stuff on Secret Garden of Survival and Secret Greenhouse of Survival.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time and joining us. We really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll talk again soon.
I like having Rick on. About a year and a half ago, I was actually on his podcast, and it was kind of nice to have him return the favor.
Yeah, and I'm going to get all of his information in the podcast on the show notes at wegrowers.com, and just look for the episode. We'll put all that in there. I'll have links to his books on Amazon, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, he's got a very cool garden. I don't know. Have you read the book?
I don't read books.
That's right. Did you look at the pictures?
I did.
Okay.
I've seen some pictures.
The pictures are really cool. It's kind of this round, everything kind of works its way out, like you said, from like a tree. It's definitely a permaculture technique that I've picked up, meeting some other permaculture guys and seen
I think
this.
they call it gilding.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I've seen that before. I really like it. I don't know what it's called, but I've seen it. It's pretty cool because if you mix in some aquaponics, you can do some stuff with that. And then you can also mix in the berms. And if you're doing it right where the water's flowing, you watch your land and you watch and see where the water moves. And there's some pretty great permaculture stuff out there that you can collect that water in mulch pits and different ways to build it. So it doesn't always have to be round, but it doesn't look like a normal man-made garden with rows on a flat piece of land either. In fact, hills are actually pretty good when it comes to permaculture because you want that water to flow someplace.
Yeah, in fact, we've got a lot of folks out there that are complaining about there's some laws against collecting rainwater.
Right.
And we do believe in abiding by the law, but
Okay.
at the same time, this would be a way to utilize all the rainwater that's hitting your property, mulch pits.
Right.
If you've got a tank or a barrel underneath of your eave spout, yeah, you are collecting rainwater. You
Right.
are inhibiting the water from going to the earth.
Right.
Which I don't find a problem with that, but
If you stick a big sponge in the ground and it happens to absorb it all, you're
yeah,
actually not
well,
doing anything.
That's
wrong.
just landscaping,
Exactly.
So that's the way I see it. This is a way to, you've got some water harvesting laws. Well, I've just got a lot of trees and some plants and stuff, and I don't harvest the water.
Exactly.
They do. Arrest my tree.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many techniques out there that, and that's what I like is to see like the prepper community.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that with love, the preppers, but get that mindset out that I'm just doing this for me and reaching out to the people. Frankly, I'm going to go with it, the tree huggers, and learn what they're doing and have been doing as well, because we can benefit from that and the community can benefit from that. And we don't have to believe in their politics to know that the way that they're growing things is smart.
Yep.
And I hope that in turn they can learn that they don't have to not like us because we have some guns. How's that? I mean, we can all learn from each other.
Oh man. Okay. Now I got to tell a story.
Oh no.
I met this lady at a job, at my day job, and she made an offhand comment about, I'm working on a copier that's dead. And I said, well, we're going to have to shoot old Betsy here. And joking around. Well, she got kind of offended that I would mention shooting something in her office.
Oh no.
And I'm like, ma'am, it's just a figure of speech. Like, when an animal's dying, you put it out of its misery. Well, that's with an injection. You don't shoot it. I'm like, I'm more scared of needles than I am bullets. So yeah, you go ahead and shoot me instead. But anyway, we got in this conversation and
She didn't know what you did for a living on the side.
No, she didn't. But I educated her. We were talking about how guns are bad, apparently, and no matter who's holding it, a gun is bad. I said, the classic pro-gun speech is, well, how will you get rid of all of the people that are bad that have guns? If everybody listens to you and turns in their guns, great. But what about the people that already break the law and will keep their guns? Well, there'd just be less guns on the planet. Yeah. Well, there'd be less guns in the hands of people that are willing to defend laws and things like that. I said, what about police? Can police have guns? Well, in Britain, they don't have guns. Well, I guarantee you there are guns. Not every cop has a gun, but I'm pretty sure they've got access to guns just in case. And we kind of went back and forth. And she said, well, if we just didn't have guns, would you still have guns? I'm like, well, I wouldn't want one, but let me show you this. And I whipped out the picture of me with my flamethrower. And I said, that's rabbit poop. What? Why would you build a weapon like that? I'm like, actually, that's not a weapon. That's a display of waste product being used as a fuel. And she said, well, it looks like a flamethrower. I was like, well, that's what got it on TV. But yeah, this could easily be weaponized. I can make anything explode that's made out of hydrocarbons. Just give me enough oxygen. Things will go boom. Bad people will find a way to kill good people. That will happen forever.
It has forever.
So I mean, if you're not a God believer, then the story's going to fall on deaf ears. But Cain and Abel, that wasn't a pistol that old Cain pulled on Abel. It was a rock. You know, are you going to start banning rocks?
Yeah, no, we can't.
But anyway, I'll get off of my right-wing gun-loving rant here.
Well, I will tell you that I had something cool over the weekend. He was talking about Nigerians and all that for goats. We had goat BBs.
Oh.
So our one goat, it's the first time we've delivered. I actually was there and did the whole thing. So,
wow.
Yeah, I got to deliver goats.
That sounds messy.
So when the buck hits 3 months, I get to play with that 22, see how goat meat tastes.
There you go.
No, I don't, my wife is going to sell them before we get to eat them. I guarantee it. Because goats are in demand and he's a really cool buck. Yeah. He's black and white, mostly white with some black spots. And the sister, the doe, is black with the white spots. So they're kind of mirror images of each other.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So kind of neat there to go along with the gun story.
There you go. All right, that was a good transition there.
Not really. So
speaking of guns, I'm going to shoot a goat in 3 months.
Speaking of guns, yeah. So, all right. Well, as you guys know, I know it's been a while, so we're back on www.wegrowers.com, twitter.com/wegrowers, facebook.com/wegrowers. Go follow us on Twitter and tweet things or do whatever it is you're going to do. And Facebook, go follow us and post and interact. On the website, click on Ask Us. You can leave a voicemail. You can ask us questions. Visit the consulting page. We talk about all this stuff. We're assembling our expert teams in order to go out and help actually do this stuff and put it into implementing it. And, you know, heck, if you're up there, maybe Rick Austin will come pay a visit. We can maybe get him to come out, give you some pointers. So, we've got some connections. We're starting to use them. So, go there and look at that consulting page. Give us a holler. There's a form on that. And I think keep watching out for some upcoming shows with the Phoenix Grow Your Own Food Summit. Is that what it's called?
Something like that.
Yeah. We'll have them tell.
Yes.
So thank you.
We'll catch you next week. So long.